It's great to be here. I feel very privileged to be here at this VU Data conversation today to talk to you, as Lena mentioned, about 4TU research data and a pilot that we have at 4TU that will offer researchers an opportunity to have their data and software code peer reviewed. So my name's Connie Clare and I am the community manager at 4TU Research Data. In the next sort of 15 minutes, I'll give you a bit of an overview for those that don't know about 4TU Research Data as the repository, a little bit about the community, and then we'll move on to talking about data and code peer review. And I'll be sharing the plans for our pilot project, which will involve two different organisations. So the first one is an open access journal managed by Delft University of Technology, which is called The Evolving Scholar. And then we're also collaborating with an organisation called CodeCheck, which some of you may already have heard of. And then hopefully at the end, we can have some interactive discussion and you can ask some questions. But also I'd really appreciate your feedback because this is really at the very initial stages of the pilot, so we haven't yet launched it. So what's 4TU Research Data? For those who don't know, it's an international data repository for science, engineering and design. And you can access it using the link that I've put in the chat to the portal so you can see the various different disciplines that we're able to support. And the repository is available currently to researchers all around the world. So any researcher from any institution, including the VU at Amsterdam, can publish their data and software code in the repository. And as an organisation, we have a team of people and try to operate certain services that can support researchers with the curation, sharing, access, and long-term preservation of their research outputs. And we do have the Core Trust Seal of Approval, which means that we're a trusted, certified digital repository, and we've been around for about 12 years now. So the repository was founded as part of the 4TU Federation, and 4TU stands for 4 technical universities, which includes Delft University of Technology, Eindhoven University of Technology, University of Twente, and more recently, Wageningen University and Research. And in the repository, we have more than 8,000 technical science datasets, so we do have quite a large user community. And since I started my role as the community manager in October 2020, we've been focused on building the community around the repository. So if you head over to the community website, you should be able to see some of those public member profiles that show some of those faces that have really helped to build the community over the past year and a half. So we have around 160 members of the community at the moment who are researchers and data support staff. And as Lena mentioned, the idea is to connect these multidisciplinary people to exchange knowledge and best practices about the creation and reuse of fair data. And it's important when we think about community, because at 4TU Research Data, we're aiming to try and provide a community-driven infrastructure. So this is the implementation of certain services and initiatives that can help researchers and support them in being able to publish their fair data and code. So we're trying to listen to the community and meet the needs. We want to make it quick, easy and efficient to be able to publish data and software code. But also importantly, we want to be able to improve the quality of those deposits. And I think this is why we're thinking of this peer review for data and code, because if we can try to improve the quality, it will in turn help with reproducibility and reuse of the deposits, and hopefully also lead to recognition and reward. And that's not just for the researchers who are depositing their data and code, but also those reviewers who are contributing towards the effort to make data fair. So I don't think I need to go into peer review. We've just heard from Mahesh about the peer review of preprints. But we do know that traditionally peer review has been focused on assessing the quality of scientific publications, and as Mahesh showed, including preprints. So data typically hasn't fallen under that quality assessment of peer review. So what we're aiming to do is try and extend this specifically to data and code to treat them as first-class research outputs. So what we want to do is provide an optional evaluation and validation of any open access data and software that's been published in 4TU research data. And to do this, of course, we're going to need a pool of reviewers. So these will be members of the community or people with similar competencies to those depositors. And hopefully this will help connect researchers with reviewers and help to also build the community further. So just to start by sharing the plans that we have for the peer review of data. So as I mentioned, we are teaming up with the Evolving Scholar. So this is a multidisciplinary, community-driven open access journal that's managed by TU Delft Open Publishing and also members of TU Delft Library. And they use Orvium. So Orvium is a CERN spin-off. It's a platform for scientific publications that currently facilitates the peer review process. So currently the Evolving Scholar is using Orvium for open peer review, which allows depositors of data, but also authors of publications, moderators, reviewers, and the wider research community to transparently review some of those outputs. They get some credit for that, and they are disclosed and everything is available to be seen. So this just shows you what that test environment looks like for 4TU research data. So this is where I've personally logged in. It's very simple for me to be able to upload a data set here. So you can see there's a data set that's already been uploaded as a test, and it's featuring here as a preprint because it hasn't yet been reviewed by anybody. But then a data depositor would log in here, reviewers, moderators can all access this content. So that just gives you a snapshot of what the Orvium platform looks like. So the workflow for a data review would be that the data depositor has already published their data set within 4TU research data. So they have a digital object identifier. They can then log into Orvium and be able to upload that DOI. So it's imported there. And then Orvium can automatically extract any metadata from the data item in 4TU, provided there is a clear description and a README file. And then there is a moderator that works for the Evolving Scholar that will then verify the item and accept the item so that it's then visible within Orvium. But I should mention here that 4TU research data already has a data curation workflow within the back office. So actually, this kind of verification step, although it would be relatively useful, it's already been done at the stage of the data repository. And then reviewers who are part of the community within Orvium can submit peer reviews, add their comments, and then that kind of report and recommendation would be published in the Evolving Scholar as the journal. And then we are hoping to be able to provide some kind of certification or a badge that can then be added to the metadata record in 4TU research data. So when you look at this, and I apologize that there's a lot of text on this screen, but we're thinking about some kinds of criteria that the reviewer would need to consider when assessing the quality of data or code within the repository. So I'm sure when you read through these, you can think of some more, and it would be really handy if you can also drop anything that we've missed in the chat so we can discuss it afterwards. But generally, the reviewer is asking whether there are any major flaws with the data or metadata in their opinion. And then they'll perform an editorial assessment. So they might want to know, is the data set associated with a research article? Not all data sets published in 4TU research data are underlying a scientific publication. But if they are, they would want to check, is the data set properly cited within that article? And then moving on to look at the metadata quality, they'll be looking at whether the data set has this descriptive title. Does it have the details of methodology, any legal, ethical, or privacy implications that needed to be considered? Does it have a README file that's clear and descriptive and understandable? And has the depositor used keywords that are appropriate to describe the data set? And then moving on to specifically the data quality, they'll be looking at whether the data is technically sound, logical, consistent. Are there any outliers or anomalies that have been described, or have there been any that have been withdrawn from the results? Also, do any disciplinary standards or formats apply to the data set? And is the data in an open or a proprietary source, for example? And are there any quality control measures that have been employed and described? And are there any sources of error and noise? And if the data owner has used software to analyse the data, has this also been documented and described and provided so that the analysis can be rerun? And then where methodology is concerned, it's important to just check that any data collection methods or equipment has been well detailed, and to assess whether the study design is replicable. So as I mentioned, this is probably not an exhaustive list, but if you do have any ideas, we'd really like to hear from you. And then moving on to just talk a bit more about specifically the peer review of code, we're collaborating with CodeCheck. So this is an initiative that was actually started by Stephen Eglin at the University of Cambridge and Daniel Noust from the University of Munster. And this allows for this independent verification and checking of computational workflows that typically underlie research articles. So Stephen and Daniel have set this up, and the work that they've done currently operates with various different publishers, but we're yet to try it with the data repository. So the reason for looking into this is because we've realized that many researchers in the technical sciences are increasingly using and creating software code, and they're interested in solutions for software publication. So 40 Research Data has a recent GitHub and GitLab integration. So this is the system for software management and version control. And so this integration means that researchers that use Git can publish quickly and easily a snapshot of their code in 40 Research Data. And then by publishing that there, they get a digital object identifier that makes their code citable. So by taking it a step further and then offering this opportunity for peer review, we're hopefully going to see whether or not this is going to be valuable and useful for the community, but it will also allow CodeCheck to be able to check their workflow and see if it will also work with a data repository. So just to briefly show you the workflow for this, which has been adapted from this paper that was published in F1000 Research, so you can check that out if you're interested. Basically, the code depositor, the owner of the code, would have published it either through GitHub, GitLab, or by uploading it to 40 Research Data. And then this will be sent to CodeCheck alongside some instructions to be able to rerun the code. And then CodeCheck will source the reviewer, or the code checker in this case, and they will be able to try and run the code and check for its reproducibility. And if there are any issues, any problems with reproducing, there'll be some communication and fixing of those issues back with the code depositor, who will then provide any help, updates, or further documentation. And then when it runs and it's okay, if that happens, the code checker will provide a certificate, a copy of the outputs and recommendations, which can then be fed back to 40 Research Data. It can be deposited again with the original item, so maybe a new version will be created, but there will also be then this certification badge and the certificate added to the metadata record. So that is how we plan that the workflow will operate. So this pilot, we're hoping to open a call for applications in the next few months, and that call will be open for 1 month and open to the 40 Research Data community, but also we might possibly invite researchers who publish in the Evolving Scholar to be involved in this. And we think that it's sensible to have a maximum at the start of 3 voluntary participants. So if the call is popular, then there will be a selection process, and we'll be able to select the 3 proposals that we want to take forward. And we're currently just working on this call at the moment, so more to follow soon. And finally, before I finish the presentation, I just wanted to think more about the rewards for the peer review process, because this is something that I think we're a bit stumped about at times on how to best reward researchers, but also reviewers. So researchers, of course, to get this improved quality, credibility, trustworthiness, and value of their data. And hopefully, in turn, this can lead to increased citation rates. So that would be a reward for them. And when it comes to reviewers, thinking about rewards, often it's possible that we can provide monetary compensation. So we're thinking of doing that at least for the pilot, but I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on that. and possible opportunities to get awards and badges for contributions. So for researchers who have their work peer reviewed, but also for the reviewers. And any researcher or reviewer that takes part in the pilot, we want to give transparent and fair credit. So we'd like to list them as contributors and collaborators on the project. And perhaps it's possible in the future to offer some kind of training or workshop or support for researchers who want to become reviewers within their field as well. Possibly invitation to present at a webinar to give them some visibility so they can share their experience. And then finally, as we start to grow a community of reviewers and also researchers, it might be nice to offer some kind of mentorship program so that researchers can also, again, that way become reviewers, and we can start to build the community that way as well. So I'm going to thank you for your attention. There are some useful links in the slides, but also I've popped them in the chat. And I'd also like to thank these individuals. I know Esther's here as well with us in the audience. So these are the people that have started to brainstorm some ideas with us and provide their feedback on the proposal. So I'd like to thank you all for that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more of the questions and discussion now.